This is a production of Cornell University.
Welcome to the podcast of Mann Library's Chats in the Stacks Book Talk series. In today's talk, originally presented at Mann Library on November 16, 2006, applied economics and management professor Brian Wansick discusses his new book, Mindless Eating: Why We Eat More Than We Think. In his talk, Professor Wansink explores the psychology of eating and why, when faced with over 200 food-related decisions every day, we become susceptible to mindless overeating and overdrinking.
Now, what I'm going to talk about today is research that we've done in the Food and Brand Lab here at Cornell University. Now, the Food and Brand Lab has, I think, some very, very important people, and I'm pleased that many of them are here today. So all the full-time people are here. Sandra Quaylard back there, she's the Associate Director of Operations. Lenny Vartanian's here, Associate Director of Research. There's Colin Payne, who's also Associate Director of Research, but he's doing research right now, so he can't make it. We have Pam Staub, makes our operations run very smoothly over there. And Diane Edwards is here, and she makes sure that things work out for us financially. So we're very, very grateful to have those people there. What we're going to be talking about is mindless eating, why we eat more than we think. Now, here's sort of the problem that is going on here. We gain weight because we move less, and we eat more than we used to. Now, I spent a lot of time last week up in Canada, and I'm embarrassed to say they call us the Fat 50. So then there's no state-required gym class in any of the 49 states. There's only one state that requires, that mandates gym class. Anybody know what that Midwestern state is? The girls and boys in Illinois, okay? We eat more calories, we eat more caloric foods, and we eat larger portions. And as a result, there's a lot of people pointing at obesity as a huge problem, either blaming food companies, they're blaming fast food, they're blaming the government, they're blaming agriculture, they're blaming even school lunches. But I'm going to talk about a place an overlooked place. It's the first easier battle that we can fight. It's the food fight at home. I'm going to introduce the scope of our mindless eating problem. I'm going to describe 5 myths from Chapter 3 that lead us to unknowingly booby-trap our own tables, maybe our Thanksgiving tables. And then I'm going to give 2 quick ideas you can use or recommend to mindlessly eat less. And at some point in here, we're going to take about an 11-minute break. I'm going to show a videotape of 2020 that was just on a while back. Now, here's the scope of mindless eating. Now, these are actually the 10 chapters in mindless eating. But what we're going to focus on today is specifically this aspect of surveying the tablescape, the stuff that goes on just on our table that kind of messes us up, that causes us to eat 200 more calories a day than we otherwise would, 200 calories a day than we otherwise even really want. Now, and look at the 5 myths of the tablescape. I want to start at a funny experience I had a while back. I was giving a talk at the Institute of Medicine, and this is at the National Academy of Sciences. And these are really, really smart people. I mean, they all have British accents, so you know they're smart. And I was talking about how cues end up influencing what we think is an appropriate size portion. And this very learned person said, and of course in a British accent, this: larger bowls can't possibly influence how much an intelligent, informed person eats. Fair enough. The challenge has been made. So what we did, we decided to take people who are very intelligent and very motivated, and we decided to inform them and see if something as silly as the size of a bowl can increase how much they eat. So what I did was I took a bunch of graduate students I was teaching, 60 of them, and I spent 90 minutes of a lecture, a full 90-minute lecture, doing nothing more than lecturing them about how the size of a bowl is going to bias how much they eat. The bigger the bowl, the more you take. I lectured, I showed videotapes, we did a demonstration, we broke into small groups to discuss this. I did an interpretive dance. No, I shouldn't do that. So after 90 minutes, these are smart people and they are educated people. And what we wanted to do is to see if they could remember this 6 weeks later. Now, during this entire thing, all the examples we used were examples using Chex Mix. Okay? The entire 90-minute lecture was about Chex Mix and bowls. What happened is 6 weeks later, they went back for Christmas vacation, came back, I invited them to a Super Bowl party. They came to the Super Bowl party, and upon arriving at the Super Bowl party, they were led to one of 2 rooms. The rooms were identical except for the bowls. In one room, we had big gallon-sized bowls filled with what? Chex Mix. Now, they took their plate, they kind of filled up their plate from the big gallon-sized bowls. When they got to the end of the table, a researcher said, hey, can we ask you just a few questions about who you want to win the game and stuff like this? And they're like, yeah, sure. Well, they're handed a survey, a questionnaire, and there's no place to put their plate except the corner of the table. Well, the corner of the table underneath it, tablecloth, had a scale. So once they put the thing down, we could weigh how much they were taking. Now, in the exact same identical room over here, this is also happening, but instead of it being big gallon-sized bowls, instead these ended up being half-gallon-sized bowls, twice as many half-gallon-sized bowls. And when people went, the exact same thing happened. Now, these are informed people. They're intelligent people. But what we found was that the people who served themselves from the large bowls ended up pouring 53% more food. Even though, hey, they were smart, even though they knew this, even though it was the exact same product that was just used 6 weeks earlier in 4,500 examples that day. So intelligent people end up being really, really biased by this. And that paper was actually published in the Journal of the American Medical Association last year. But I want to see if we can stretch this kind of far. I want to do this with food we hate. Okay, now most people, if you ask them why they overeat, they say they overeat because food is really, really good or because they are really, really hungry. We said, well, what happens if we give people really bad food and they're not hungry? What's going to happen? So what we did was we took people who just finished eating dinner within half an hour, rather, just finished eating lunch within half an hour. They came to the movie theater and we said, hey, it's your lucky day. It's free popcorn day. And so what we gave them was a medium-sized bucket of popcorn, or we gave them a large-sized bucket of popcorn. Okay? But this wasn't any popcorn. This was popcorn that was 5 days old. This popcorn that was so stale that it didn't even crunch when you ate it. It's like styrofoam. Actually, I'd eat a piece. This is 1 day old popcorn that I'll pass around as an example in a little bit. It was terrible, terrible stuff. Now, they're not hungry, and the food's not good. But what happens is these people walk into the theater, they sit down, they eat, movie starts, they take a little bit of popcorn, they wince. God. They put it down. About 4 minutes later, popcorn. They pick it up again, a couple more evenings, wince, put it down. This continues throughout the entire movie, and at the end of the movie, when these people leave, and we weigh their bucket, we find that the people with the bigger buckets have eaten 35% more popcorn. Popcorn they hate, even when they're not hungry. So these are really powerful cues, because in a movie, everything tells you to eat. Okay? The person next to you when they're eating, that tells you to eat. The movie that's going on, it's distracting, and nothing says eat popcorn like movies. The size of the bucket tells you how much popcorn to eat. Well, I'll pass this around. If you want to have a kernel of 1 day old popcorn, you'll know a little bit what it tastes like, but take it times 5. Okay. So we ended up doing this. The second thing I want to talk about is the notion that the shape of glasses have nothing to do with how much I drink. But I think there's a much better demonstration than I can give you with data that was done about less than a month ago when 2020 was here. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you a 12-minute clip of 2020. It's going to give you a little bit of an idea about how some research that ends up being in really good journals ends up really being reduced to very basic stuff. One of these are glasses. You saw a little bit with a bartender pouring the glasses. One of the things that happens, if you were to tell people the shape of glasses biased how much they pour, they'd say, maybe other people, but certainly not me. Well, one thing that we ended up doing was, you might remember from those brain teaser puzzle books you had when you were growing up, you'd have things like this, and they say, which line segment is longer? And you know what we all say? We all go, well, that vertical, geez, it's huge. Look at it. Well, it's about 20, we would estimate it being 18 to 20% larger than this, even though they're the same size. It's the same thing that ends up leading us to always believe the heights of anything, to overestimate heights at the expense of widths. That's why when we see the St. Louis Arch, which is an equal width as height, nobody's going, whoa, look how wide it is. They're all going, okay. Well, now the thing is, we think this should influence consumption. You had some little idea how it might do that. And so what we wanted to do is we wanted to take people who we thought were really good at estimating portion sizes, really good at estimating calories, and really motivated to do so. So we went to a health and fitness camp in New England where the kids, you know, you pay like $7,000 to be there for the summer. So if you only lose 2 pounds, that's like about $3,500 a pound. so what we did was, these are motivated kids. They know portion sizes. They know calorie estimation. They came through a cafeteria line, and as they came into the cafeteria line to get their beverage, what we handed them was a short, wide glass or tall, skinny glass, each which held 22 ounces. They came out. We said, hey, how much did you pour? They'd tell us, and then we'd weigh it. What we found is that the amount they poured, they ended up pouring about 88% more into a short, wide glass than a tall, skinny one. Yet, when we asked them to estimate, they actually estimated themselves as having poured less. Now, when this was under review at a very prestigious journal, they said, well, yeah, but they're still kids, and Piaget's work says kids have problems with the conservation of volume, but this wouldn't happen with adults. You know, it wouldn't happen with experts, for instance. Experts? Perhaps experts who are used to pouring a specific target volume, like 1.5 ounces? Bartenders. That's how much is in a shot. We went to a bunch of Philadelphia bartenders and gave them short, wide glasses, tumblers. We gave them tall, skinny glasses, highball glasses. Now, both of these glasses hold about 10.5 ounces. What we did is we gave them 4 of these glasses and said, hey, how much gin would you pour in a gin and tonic? They'd pour it. We'd go, great. Here's another glass. How much rum and coke? They'd pour it. We'd go, great. How much whiskey and whiskey in the rocks? How much vodka and a vodka tonic? Then we'd go to the guy who's working with them at the other end of the bar and say, hey, how much gin would you pour in a gin and tonic? How much whiskey and whiskey in the rocks? Rum and coke? Vodka and a vodka tonic? And what we found is that the typical person would pour 28% more into the short, wide glass than a tall, skinny glass, even though they've done this thousands and thousands and thousands of times. These people, on average, had over 5.1 years of experience, and they still end up being biased by something as simple as the size of a glass. Now, it was interesting. When we discovered this, we started really finding this over and over again in the lab. I mean, the first thing we did in the lab was we got rid of all of our short, wide glasses. And the most people did at their home was get rid of the short, wide glasses and keep the taller glasses. I mean, one guy even got rid of kind of the bulbous, red wine glasses and just replaced them with the white wine glasses. So we're really excited about this. And I'm giving this talk, a different sort of talk, to a big group of Rotarians. And there's a big group of Rotarians. And I was so excited about this research because we just discovered this like 2 weeks earlier. That in my talk, I kind of diverted and said, oh, and another thing, da-da-da-da. They said, so you know what that means? They're all going, short, wide glasses, short, wide glasses. Like, oh, yeah, okay. And the thing about this is, shortly after that, I was also making a presentation. I mentioned this to a bunch of dietitians. And this dietitian all but throws her hands in the air and she says, if even bartenders are fooled by the shape of the glass, there's no hope for the rest of us. Government needs to intervene. And for some reason, I missed some part of that logic. I said, well, one thing we can do is just buy these kind of glasses. Yeah, seems easy. So that's what this whole thing is about. Most of the stuff that happens is so hardwired because we've got way too many things to think about on a day-to-day basis to obsess about, I need to serve less because I'm serving under a large plate. Or I need to pour less because I'm pouring in a short, wide glass. It's just a whole lot easier to get rid of those things so that we can mindlessly eat, and instead of gaining 2.5 pounds a year, which is just in excess of 25 calories a day, we can actually just turn things around a little bit, and by eating 100 or 200 less calories a year, we end up losing 10 to 20 pounds over the year. Now, let's take a look at something. A lot of people, and we work a lot with people who are in physiology, and a lot of people in physiology believe that our stomach knows when we're full, that just as self-regulating human beings, we know when we're full. So that maybe something like the size of that bowl in the Super Bowl would trick somebody taking 53% more, but hey, they're not going to eat 53% more. They're going to eat, and then they're going to feel full, and they'll stop. Well, they actually ate 59% more in the case of the Super Bowl study. And what we find time and time again is that if somebody serves themselves, they end up eating on average about 92% of what they served. And I want to show you this because some people say, well, at least people know when they're full and they know when to stop eating. We did a little test of this, and the test involved a refillable soup bowl. Now, if you end up talking to people and asking them how they know when they're through eating, a lot of Americans say, yeah, I'm through eating when the plate's clean. I'm through eating when my bowl's empty. End of story. Well, what would happen if your plate never emptied or your bowl never emptied? So we designed something, a refillable soup bowl. Now, I'll give you a little bit of an idea what this looks like. There it is, okay? It looked a little something like this. This is actually a facsimile because all the real soup bowls are still in my garage. Yeah, that's another issue. But we took bowls. We ended up putting something called a bayonet mounting in the bottom of the hole. We drilled a hole in the bottom, ran food-grade tubing down through holes in tables. There's a hole there and a hole underneath that bowl, through and up to big 6-quart cauldrons on either side of the table of soup. So what would happen is that a person could start eating the soup, and as they ate, it'd go down very slowly, but then imperceptibly it'd start to rise again. So you could eat and eat and eat and eat and eat, and you never get to the bottom and see what awaited you at the bottom. Oh, this little smiley face. Now, I'll give you an idea what this looks like. We'll take a trip out to my garage, and we'll see one of these gruesome things. Here's the bowl, the connector goes underneath. Goes back up to this cauldron right here. And we did this test over and over again. We'd bring people in for lunch. We had 2 people ate out of normal bowls, 2 people out of these refillable bowls, tomato soup. They'd sit down. They'd get started. After 20 minutes, we'd come back and we'd stop the study. Okay? And we've probably done this with 170 people. How many people out of these 170 do you think realized something was going on? Yep, 2 people did, but I'll tell you how they did it. One person dropped a napkin and went, oh, dropped a napkin. Picked the thing up and saw all this Borg-like tubing under the table. So what's he say? He says, oh, dude. So anyway, we had to get rid of those people. But the other person that found this out, I guess forgetting that he wasn't at some sort of medieval Viking banquet, decided to channel one of these Viking ancestors and picked this bowl up. Well, what happens is that the soup, because it's being gravity fed, starts splashing up and down, it's gurgling, and it looks like a coral snake coming out of the table. And this poor woman next to him screams, and this isn't like a eek, this is like a ah! And the guy across, he backs up, he knocks his chair over, he almost falls over. So after some conferencing, we decided to eliminate them from the study. But what we ended up finding with this is even though people only eat for 20 minutes, what happens is that they end up eating 73% more soup. But when we ask them to rate how full they are, they don't rate themselves as being any more full than the other group that ate a whole lot less soup. Because how could they be full? They still have half a bowl of soup left. And this is one of the big problems with eating is we don't really know when we're full until it's too late. Now I want to talk about myth number 4, which was just of chapter 3. It said our taste buds don't lie. People know what they eat, and they know what they don't like. And you've heard people say this before. Look, I know what I like. Come on. Well, the easiest way to disprove somebody like that is the next time you're out eating dinner with them, and you say, oh, wow, this appetizer is really, really great, and they try it. It biases them to look for things that are really, really great in an appetizer. And they'll believe it's really, really great. Nobody ever, who you say, hey, this is great, try this. Nobody goes, that's terrible. Alternatively, if you eat something, say, oh, I think something's wrong with this. Can you try this? They're not going to eat it and say, no, indeed, that's fine food. No, and it's not because they're being polite. It's because our expectation biases what we taste. So a while back, this is when I was at the University of Illinois, this gentleman was in charge of campus dining, and he said, you know, we have this really nice test cafeteria. We're coming up with these low-calorie sort of foods. Can you help me figure out what we need to do to kind of sell more of these low-calorie foods? And so one thing we did was we just simply renamed foods. So we took things that were originally named seafood fillet, and we said, no, that is now succulent Italian seafood fillet. So for a couple of weeks it'd be this, then a couple of weeks it'd be this, then a couple of weeks it'd be this, and then we'd rotate it back and forth. And what we'd do is we'd give people, after they finished eating these target items, we'd give them questionnaires to fill out the rate. Okay? So in both cases, it's the exact same thing. It's just a dried old fish stick, you know, basically. Don't listen to me, Jim. But in this case, and we had chocolate cake, and we called something, you know, Black Forest Belgium double chocolate cake. Again, it's dried sheet cake that has less fat and less sugar in it. It's nasty. But what we ended up finding was that when we did this, after we finished, not only did people take 28% more, but after they finished eating, they rated the food as tasting a whole lot better. We even had a question that said, describe the chef's culinary training. And if they had something that had a descriptive label, they'd say things like, well, I think he's probably trained a couple years on the continent. They'd be making up these incredible things. They liked the restaurant more, everything. But all it was two descriptive words in front of what it normally was, and it tremendously biased people's taste expectations. Now, this is some really great news you can use, because if you're having friends over for Thanksgiving, and you say, oh, my God, I can't believe they're going to be over in a few minutes, and I don't have very much done. Instead of spending those last few minutes making things perfect, you're much better off coming up with a name of your food and instead of saying, here you go, here's some stuffing. You're much better off saying, here you go, this is the type of stuffing that my mother has had in her family for generations. Please enjoy it for me. Actually, no. Just a couple words description among a lot of foods end up biasing people and thinking it's going to taste better, and their taste buds dutifully follow. Now, we have a restaurant that we use to do research in. And it's only open one day a week. It's called the Spice Box. And at the Spice Box, although people think that they're mainly to test recipes, so at the end of every dinner, you know, they pay about $25 prefix for a prefix menu. And at the end of it, they know they're going to get some little half-sheet rating thing or something like that. But what they don't know is that usually something much more, I was going to say devious, but that's a bad word, something much more suspicious is going on. And one day, a couple of Februarys ago, what we ended up doing was, for the people who braved the winter, we gave them a free glass of Cabernet Sauvignon. Now, this isn't a particularly good bottle of wine. This is Charles Shaw wine, and if anybody's ever had it, you've probably paid $2 for it. And what's Charles Shaw wine known as? $2 Chuck. That's right. It's a $2 bottle of wine. But we didn't serve it with this label. What we did is we soaked these labels off, and we put on different labels. And these are labels that said, that's from a place called Noah's Winery, new from California, a place known for wine. Or the other half of the tables received the same wine with a different label that said, from Noah's Winery, new from North Dakota. California means wine. North Dakota means buffalo or snow or something like that. And what we wanted to do was not see what they thought of the wine, because of prior studies, we knew that if they thought they were tasting North Dakota wine, they would really rate it as tasting bad, even though it's the same wine. What we wanted to see was how it influenced the rest of the meal, whether it had a halo or whether it had a shadow on the rest of the meal. What we ended up finding was that the typical people drinking what they believed was California wine ended up staying 10 minutes longer. They ate 10 minutes longer. They ate 11% more of their food, and they made reservations to come back. On average, I think at 3 weeks, they're going to come back in 3 weeks, about on average. People who instead drank what they believed was North Dakota wine finished 10 minutes faster. They didn't eat as much as their food. The night wasn't really all that magical for them. And when asked if they cared to make reservations, they'd say, yeah, it's a really busy semester. Busy. Now, the thing about this is that if we end up looking at the way most of us buy wine, most of us buy wine by saying, okay, there's a price point I want to spend, $10, let's say. You walk into a wine store, you kind of go, okay, what's got the nicest label? Yeah, this one does. And that actually ends up being a pretty good strategy for most people, because what happens is people see the label, they see the bottle, and as long as it doesn't say North Dakota, they've got decent expectation of what it's going to taste like, and their taste buds often line up with what their expectations are. It's kind of funny, when we were doing this study, this guy kept saying, and this is Jim Painter again, he kept saying over and over again, hey, some wise guy put a cork in this wine bottle. And then he'd chuckle to himself, and then he'd say that again about 10 minutes later. And I didn't realize it's a quote. So to measure your pop culture knowledge, who is it that said this quotation? His initials are HS. Homer Simpson, yeah. Now, the last thing I'm going to talk about is, hey, I'm eating healthy food, so I'm going to lose weight, right? Well, we did a study called the McSubway study, and what we ended up doing was we intercepted people as they left, 250 people as they left Subways, and we said, hey, what did you have to eat today? They told us, we wrote it down. We said, how many calories do you think are in that? We wrote it down. We ended up then figuring out how many calories they actually ate. Then we did the same thing with McDonald's that happened to be located within half a block of those same Subways. Now, what's not surprising is people eat more calories at McDonald's than they do at Subway. On average, they ended up eating about 710 calories at McDonald's. But if you asked them how many they ate, I mean, they knew they were bad boys. They were eating about 670 calories, and that's what they estimated, which is darn good. And there's a lot of variance there, but they're really pretty accurate. People at Subway indeed did eat less. They ate about 560 calories on average. But what's interesting is they ended up tremendously underestimating how much they ate. They believed they ate about 340 calories. In reality, they ate about 670. Because what? Well, it's a healthy place to eat, so everything here must be healthy, including the mayonnaise, including those chips. And, you know, I'm eating healthy, so I think I deserve some cookies, too. Yeah. And this is one of the real dangers we find of not only low-fat foods, but eating any place where there's a health halo, because we let the health halo cast over a lot of things that we shouldn't let it cast over. So the two bad things that happen, we underestimate the calories, and we often can compensate later in the day saying, hey, you know, I ate that Subway dinner. I really sacrificed by eating that thing today. So, you know, I think I deserve the Haagen-Dazs. And that's the danger. Now, 5 myths, what's the solution? The solution is not concentration and willpower. But that's what we always want to think, because being in academics, we think that education is the solution to everything. In reality, the smartest people we know, the people who have been lectured to for 90 minutes, still end up eating 53% more. The people with lots of experience, the bartenders, still end up pouring 28% more. We're just too put out to remember this stuff. There's too many things in our mind. And sooner or later, we will fail. We've done some kind of fun candy dish experiments. In fact, I think on Pam's desk right now, there's a candy dish sitting there. And if you put a candy dish on your desk, you're going to eat twice as many candies as if you just move it 6 feet away. Because what happens is every time you look at that candy dish, you kind of go, do I want one? No. Do I want one? No. No. And eventually those no's turn into maybes, turn into yeses, because we make over 200 decisions a day about food, but we think we make about 15. The solution is to try to fight mindless eating with mindless solutions. Simply changing the environment is enough for most of us to not only stop our weight gain for the year, but also just turn it around. Like I said, making 2 small changes. Let's say moving the serving bowls off the table and not serving the pasta family style. If it cuts down the number of servings you eat from 3 to maybe 2, you've cut down 100 calories. If you do that every day, every year, that's 10 pounds less. So the idea is to make it so these extra food decisions do not have to be made. So here's 2 quick ideas you can use tonight. We eat 92% of whatever we serve ourselves, regardless of what biases us. How can we stop this? Well, here's some ways to mindlessly use cues to reverse our natural tendency. Now, this just relates to, like I said, Chapter 3 with the dinner table. You can think small. You can use smaller plates, smaller bowls, but allow refills. You do that, we find you end up eating about 20% less. You can replace wider glass with taller ones. You can make it inconvenient. Keep the serving bowls in the kitchen and off the table, unless it's vegetables and salad, which you want to eat more of. And try to pre-plate your food so you know how much you've eaten. So the key to mindless eating is we don't want to go on a deprivation diet. We don't even want to know we're on a diet. The best diet there is the diet you don't know you're on. And making these small little changes, small, easy, doable, and the success breeds success. Now, for more information, we're going to be on CBS Weekend News this Sunday. Geraldo at Large, they've been shooting all day today, so they just finished up. They've been here since 6 a.m., so that's going to be on Monday night, and CBS Nightly News with Katie Couric is going to have us on Monday night, and they're going to have a lot of really cool footage of Cornell. If you're interested, we've got education resources, lesson plans, in-class exercises, posters, and cartoons at mindlesseating.org. And if you know any high school student or 4-H student who is working on a science project related to food or consumers, there's some small grants we give for expenses if they're working with consumers and food. So that is my book. Chapter 3 of my book.
Oh, Brian.
This has been a production of Cornell University. On the web at cornell.edu.